Yeah, I think that psychologically speaking, it's one of the most beneficial things that a person can do, particularly for a man. Like, it just ticks all the boxes. People say that, oh, men like things, not people, except hunting with a group of guys, like on that trip.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the most enjoyable, fulfilling things that you could do.
Yeah.
So, like, it brings men together, it strengthens them, it shows them what they can really do.
That unity and will and just sheer physical action, like it's so masculine to the core, like everyone behind one banner, and I think you get that in hunting.
Totally. And I think something that's really, really important about hunting that men really, really need is a pursuit.
Yeah.
The pursuit.
Welcome to the Fit for the Kingdom podcast, episode 30. You're here with your host, Tahr Casson, and with us again today is Lucas Orr, just back off the mountains. So we're going to get into that in a second. I'll give him a quick intro. If you want to hear the first pod that we did with Lucas, that was episode 28, where we discussed some of the body-mind connection, intentionality, the parable of the talents. It's definitely a great conversation, and we were meaning to talk about this in the first convo, but we ran out of time. The good thing about it is that now we can dedicate a whole podcast to that, and that topic is hunting. So Lucas is a full-time dairy farmer, business owner. He has worked in the commercial hunting sector here in New Zealand and guided for 8 years on and off, leading men and groups through hunting expeditions across some of the most demanding country on earth. He's a seasoned hunter. He's married. He and his wife have just welcomed their first son, Bradley. How old would he be now?
He's 11 weeks on the weekend.
11 weeks. We saw him last night. He's alive and kicking.
Oh man, is he what? Kid's wired.
Yeah. And he's a writer, thinker, student of history, a friend, and he's here to share some hard-won insight on life and masculinity, and really what that looks like in the context of hunting, because as I'm sure you'll talk about, it's kind of the sandbox of masculinity, really, hunting.
It makes or breaks a lot of men, a lot of people, but I think uniquely men have something to gain from it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into that.
Absolutely, man. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to Paul as well, because he's like the original hunter in the group. Obviously, due to distances and everything, we don't always have the ability to just go around interviewing people in a taxi. So we got to make do with what we can here in rural North Canterbury. But yeah, really looking forward to this conversation. So I guess just kick us off, Lucas. What was your introduction and experience with hunting? I'm guessing it would have started obviously before you were an adult.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, I just want to say that there is this huge wave of like late onset hunters that are like guys who get to their 30s, 40s, even 50s, and they're in finance, they're in like consulting, whatever, and they're like epitomizing masculinity, or so they thought. They're jacked, they're maybe they're like really, really wealthy or whatever it is, and then like one of their friends invites them to like, I don't know, like butcher a deer or something, followed by barbecue or something like that, and they're like, what? And it just something clicks into place or snaps even, and they're like, oh, I have to do this. I actually worked in a hunting store for a number of years straight out of high school. It's where I gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of momentum into where I am now. And the amount of older guys that would come in, like pretty sheepishly, being like, oh, I'm not a hunter, da, da, da. And then like within 2 years, these guys are absolute slaying machines. And they walk into a room differently, I swear. They practically smell different.
Yeah.
So I just want to give a shout out to all those guys that are getting after it in a later period of life. But I was quite lucky. I was introduced to it very young. I had friends that owned farms that my father could teach us to shoot on. But in terms of like a very typical Kiwi experience, like I know a lot of guys that have been big game hunting since they were like 8, 9, 10. I didn't do any of that. I grew up small game shooting, rabbits, hares, and bird shooting. And that was really special
Cats.
for me. Yeah, feral cats, lots of feral cats. Oh yeah, for sure. And that was really special for me because my father could teach both my older brother and I at the same time, and it was a lot more, casual. But what was really, really special about it in a wider sense, not just for me, was that my father wasn't taught by anyone. So our bookshelf at home when I was growing up was like littered with like fishing and hunting and like bushcraft how-to books, because my father would stay up and like learn all this stuff on a Friday night and then take us out on Saturday morning. So it was a very, very, very special sequence of events. But yeah, I was introduced to it reasonably young. I started big game hunting at 14. My father enrolled us in a hunter's course with a local hunting club, the Deer Stalkers Association. And there's all these like old battle axes that have been hunting for like 40, 50, 60 years that are, you know, they get out there and hammer it, but they just do things slower, and they're just wealths of knowledge. And so I was very lucky to be around them from a pretty young age, and just went from there.
Yeah. And did it always appeal to you? Because I'm just thinking, like, when you mentioned learning, like with the small game and the shooting, I feel like it's one of those very tactile hobbies. Like the other classic one is cars. You know, men love cars. They love to work on cars. And there's an element of like that mentorship that happens from father to son, or from mentor figure to younger guy, in terms of learning on the tools, learning out in the fields, out in the bush.
Yeah, I suppose so. But for me, it was more about just being outside with my father, who was a very, very busy guy. You know, 5 kids, single income household. You know, we really cherished the time that he could dedicate to us, individually, or just like the 2 older boys. You know, rather than just all 5 of us sort of thing. So, and I was an absolutely feral barefoot bush child. Like I never wanted to be inside.
Yeah.
And so just being out there was a lot of fun, and learning those skills was really awesome. I think having an environment that is like that was where I wanted to be, outside running around. Obviously, you don't do too much running around with guns, but you know, metaphorically running around. But there was also that very intense structure and discipline required, and like very serious consequences for mistakes made and things like that. I think a young boy really needs that. You know, it's like Jordan Peterson tells a story where his son Julian was being a complete a-hole when he was a young boy, and you know, like trying to get attention by acting out. And then when Peterson and his wife would discipline him, he ended up appreciating it more. You know, like even though it seems like you're doing the wrong thing for disciplining the child appreciates the structure and the attention. I think it had a little bit of that going on, Yeah, I appreciated the structured environment, even though I was out in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that, I think.
Well, I think, and I guess you can talk about this more, but I think that might be what appeals to, you mentioned there's like that older generation of people that are coming into it, but even from a younger guy's point of view, there's something that's much more real to hunting as compared to going to the gym, which is like, it's still obviously very positive. We don't mean to diminish that in any way, but the gym is very much, you're kind of training in the comfort of a safe environment. But out in the hills, you know, you've got consequences, and you may have sacrificed a weekend and you're going to come home empty-handed. So there's more reality within that.
Yeah, it's extremely structured and process driven and things like that, in the way that you should operate. You know, like a hunter that doesn't have a process and they just like do their thing, they're probably not going to be very successful. You know, we see it a lot overseas in regions that have very strict hunting regulations and things like that. Like guys wait all year for a chance to have like a 14-day deer season, and they will not allow anything to go wrong. Like not the weather, not the equipment. So like they spend all year training, they spend all year shooting and practicing in various positions. They will not tolerate anything to go wrong, and so their processes are bordering on like elite military level. Not so much here, you know, like we can hunt all year round. So if you don't get anything, you just like, oh, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, a hunter that has those processes is going to do really well, and it's a real dance between the fact that you should have processes in place. You should be extremely disciplined. You should be well practiced. You should really know what you're doing. Pitting that against Mother Nature, that's just all over the place. I love it.
Yeah. What do you think, What do you think that approach has done to you and like affected your mindset? Because I know you've said multiple times something along the lines of like nothing on earth requires so much from you, but it also gives so much back to you. How would you describe that like give and take, more interiorly speaking, like in terms of you as a man going out on the hunt? And because that it's a real experience, like it's not just a workout, it's a real experience.
Yeah, I mean, the cliche is like this, oh, there's something primal in it, like the primal nature of the pursuit. And I think it's definitely there, but I think that's like quite, like it's almost surface level.
Right.
There is not a single person on earth who won't benefit from an experience like a hunt, because basically, as you say, I've said many times, it requires so much of you, you have to have those processes in place from the minute you decide, I think I'll go out this weekend. Or perhaps you live in an area where you've been dreaming about August 1st opener and those next 14 days, you know. But from the moment you decide you're going, you have to be incredibly dialed in. You have to have your mind both extremely focused on what's happening and also broad enough to have not forgotten anything. So it requires discipline, organisation, all manner of facets. I'm going to try that again. From the moment you decide that you're going to go, it requires 100% focus on small tasks and a very, very broad mind at the same time. So this push and pull between being incredibly focused and super determined and intentional, and at the same time, like you can't, it's like the tighter you grip it, the easier it'll slip away. So you can't be too tightly strung. But if you go out there, and especially in our mountains, with like a super casual attitude, like someone's going to get hurt or die. Like there's going to be a helicopter rescue involved, you know? And that's like a more, you know, surface level, high look at everything. But if you like actually really nut it down into the small bits and pieces, it will require every ounce of energy you have, every ounce of focus that you have, and it could still return zero. Nothing. You could come home, donuts. And the thing is that even if that happens, you're better off for it. And there's a lot of things that I'll concede when I make a sort of an ultimatum or an absolute statement, rather. I'll concede things sometimes. Not on this. There is nothing on earth that you can impose on yourself. Like surely, like we were talking about gulags in the last episode. Like sure, if someone else throws you in a gulag, that's probably going to be a bit tougher. But there's very few things, probably nothing actually, that you can impose on yourself that will demand what an honest multi-day mountain hunt does, and then also return back to you as much. You know, like both cups are overflowing.
Yeah.
Even if you come back empty-handed and you have a unsuccessful hunt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, take us through it a bit more specifically. Like I haven't had really any experience hunting. We went on that first one, that Rangitata trip, which was great, and maybe we can get into that a bit. But for our international viewers or Aussies, I don't think that hunting is as common in Aussie, but
yeah, it's very restrictive. Yeah.
But even here, like a lot of people, even me who was a farmer, like I've hardly wandered over those hills right there, like on my back door. You know, I'm just working and doing all of these other things. So what does that look like practically? You know, you've decided to go out on the weekend, you have to pick a location. You know, you obviously have to hunt up the hill, you have to know where the animal is, you have to track it. Sometimes that's at nighttime. I guess walk us through it. I don't know how specific you want to get, but for someone who has no idea of what hunting actually looks like.
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, you need to have a various amount of skills in place and processes in place, or if you are either at the start of your journey or, you know, for whatever reason, you're not someone who operates with processes and knowledge at your back, you have to be okay with the fact that you don't have those things. And things can go sideways real quick. You know, like if you're not good with maps, I've always been obsessed with maps. And so that's not a problem for me. But if you're not good with maps or you're not good with terrain identification, or like identifying terrain features that indicate a likelihood to hold animals and things like that. You have to be okay with the fact that, I'm just going to go here, park here, walk up there, and hope for the best. So like even that, there's virtue and benefit in that mentality of like, well, there's like an accountability aspect almost, even in that.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, it's like, I'm not good with this thing, so I'm gonna have to just get there and hope, and put everything else in place to try and make myself successful. And if not, well, I mean, I'm lacking, so it's on me, And that sort of attitude is applied to literally every step, from picking a spot, getting all your gear together, making sure that you've worked hard enough to be reasonably well equipped, like so that you can afford it. Outdoor gear is pretty expensive, or can be. Or again, you have to be okay with the fact that you might not have the nicest stuff, or you are missing aspects in what otherwise would be a complete arsenal, whether that's a first aid kit or some safety utility items, or having a nice rifle or whatever it is. So there's this aspect of accountability throughout, because it's all on you.
Yeah, there's no safety net.
That's it. There's just no safety net. And then, so you've identified a location or not. You're just going to wing it. You get up there. But I don't think people quite understand the effort involved in just like walking for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I guess we might just use Rangitata as an example because it's one that I did, but like, so us from Christchurch, we drove an hour and a half. For me and Lucas, it was a bit longer because we're further up north. So this is I think we left 7 a.m. Christchurch, so not ridiculously early, but somewhat early. We got to the car park of the general area at about 10:30, and then we basically had a destination which was a small lake, which would have not been the top of the mountain, but sort of close-ish. I don't know how you describe it. It was like multiple peaks on the one mountain.
Yeah, so we would refer to that as a basin or a bowl. Yeah, so it's kind of like a sort of a curved face of the mountain as opposed to like a very steep one.
Right. So so it's a bit sort of more spread out. To get to that lake, it was a 1,700 meter ascent, and it took us close to 7 hours, and that was in hot January, like sunburn. You're basically frying yourself on the side of the hill.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way. But that was already, and I guess with the pack on, you'd have what, anywhere from 10 to 15 kilos of weight?
Yeah, at least.
10 to 20?
At least. Yeah.
Depending on how heavy you're packed.
Yeah, I do a lot of solo hunting. Ever since I left high school, my roster has always been midweek days off. So I've done a lot of solo hunting, and in that case, there's no gear sharing, and so it's like 20 kilos for like a 3 or 4 day hunt is the minimum. And I know that there's a lot of like modern gear that's like ultralight, and so people maybe listening to this, or definitely people I would know would be like, what? Like, why so heavy? But lightweight gear is dainty, and I don't like stuff that breaks, and B, very expensive. So, I'd say like a minimum for a good couple of days would be 15 to 20 to 25, and that's on the way in.
Yeah, so you're basically, you're going up to the hill, again, as you said, with no guarantee that there's going to be an animal to where you thought there would be. But that's already like, I wasn't done, but like that uses a good amount of your gas tank, like 70 to 80%.
I think that you could probably agree that it's a very, very different type of like caloric expenditure. It's super high. Like if you hunt for 3 days, I guarantee you're in a calorie deficit the entire time. Like there's no,
yeah, it'd be impossible to
eat
that
much. It's impossible to keep up with it. Even if you're doing like 34, 35, 3,600 calories a day, which is on the high end for sure in terms of a hunter, like you actually lose your appetite in the hills. I get it real bad, like you don't want to eat. And so there's that aspect as well. But also from a physicality standpoint, I think that you're a great example, and some of the other guys on that trip are also great examples. Josh D, for example, I'm pretty sure he said something about maxing out a leg press machine. Like that guy, we were frying Josh. The poor guy probably thought he would handle it quite well. And he did, to be fair, but like hill fitness is just something different. Like a mountain will drain you like a air-conditioned gym cannot.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I was like quite happy with my performance in the sense that like from doing only gym training and like a few 5K runs, I was like, this is going to be at the limit of or above my ability. And like I made it through. And like I'm glad that my training did translate into that, because I could easily imagine, I remember I did a similar hike a few years ago and I don't think my training did translate, or like that. I remember I injured my knee or something. But it shows that you can kind of put yourself in a position where you can do it, but it's definitely not the same. Like in no workout would I be pushing to the edge of my ability in the same way that a 7-hour hike does. It's just not comparable.
Yeah.
And you've got weight on the back, and it's in the sun, and it's not like you have a rest. Like you're literally stuck on the side of a hill. You're not just going to be able to take a cold shower or, just strip down a bit and wash the sweat off. Like you just have to get up there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, there's a sort of a finality to it. Because, I mean, like, you either keep going
or you go back.
or you turn around and go home.
Yeah.
You know? So circling back, so you've got all of that accountability in terms of your processes, your equipment, all of the behind the scenes stuff, and then you actually get there. You've got to actually climb a mountain with a pack on, and again, that whole accountability thing is like either you have the gear and therefore you've got to carry it, or you don't and you've got to make do without it.
Yeah. I
think I might have mentioned it at least once. I have this saying that's like a dad-ism. All my friends and family hate hearing it because they've heard it a million times. It's, if you haven't got it now, find a way to not need it. Like do whatever mental gymnastics you have got to do to be okay with the fact that you look at yourself in the mirror, you forgot that thing. You left it at home. It's sitting on the bench. Or you haven't gone out and you are cocky, you haven't put it on the list, you didn't go out and buy it. Or, like I said, you left it at home. Like, weather's turning, or in the case of a forgotten item, like, you're going to have to seriously get creative about how you overcome this. Whatever it is you've left behind. Just like the radical accountability, like do whatever you need to do to be okay with the next 24 to 48 plus hours without the thing.
Well, even just silly things like this was at the end of January, but up on that mountain it probably got to freezing temperature overnight and I didn't have any thermals or anything, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got a good sleeping bag, I've got a hoodie, got some trackies, I should be all right.
Yeah.
And you end up freezing half the night.
Yeah.
And there's just stuff like that. You're like, as you said, you're all right. Got to suck it up.
Like I said, you just got to do whatever mental gymnastics required to be okay with it. Well, like, you just got to sit there and cry.
Yeah. So you're at the mountain. You usually hunt animals overnight or like in that dusk?
Yeah. Most animals will move more often than not in that early morning. Like those twilight periods, early morning, and right towards the sunset sort of thing. It's also a lot more predictable. There's a thing called thermal winds. Rising air goes up, hot air rises, goes up, cooler air comes down the mountain. So there's a lot more predictability in it as well. Things are a lot more still typically. So basically, if you're already in a location, then you'll typically like get out of your tent or leave the hut early in the morning, in the dark probably, hunt for a couple hours, then do whatever you need to do to get yourself in a good position for the evening hunt as well, which usually involves just like stuffing all your gear in a bag and burning over to the other side of the mountain, or down one side and then up the other side onto a new mountain to set yourself up for an evening hunt. And so, like once you get there, you're not there, it doesn't end. But yeah, you mostly spend the middle of the day collecting yourself or moving. And so, yeah, in rare circumstances, if you're already in a good area, you might like climb to a point in the mountain and have a nap or something like that. That's a good method, and just wait for the animals to start moving again. But more often than not, you're making a plan, and so it doesn't end.
Yeah. So it'd almost always be overnight or 2 nights.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of areas that are that hold animals that you could get in a single day, but there's also the challenges there. It's like they're usually like well known. People will also want to just hunt for a day, so they're also you're having to compete against other hunters and such things. Yeah.
And I guess it gives you a few more windows if you didn't get anything the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also appreciate the completeness of spending a night in the mountains. Like I don't really think that anything compares. Like I just love, like if someone told me it's like, hey, you're not allowed to hunt anymore, or you can only hunt under certain circumstances, I would still just go out and spend like nights in the mountains.
Yeah.
And like I would never be interested in going for a day hike. Like it doesn't interest me whatsoever. There's something about the completeness of being out there around the clock and facing whatever that mountain has to throw at you for a full daily cycle or more. There's just something about it, dude.
Yeah. So hunting an animal, what does that look like in terms of you need to spot it? How far away are you?
Yep. So an experienced hunter or a lucky hunter will come upon an animal without having to use optics, but we use binoculars or spotting scope, which are small telescopes and things like that. Again, that's investment required. Paul, the stallion, doesn't even bother using binoculars because he's such a good hunter.
Yeah.
I think most guys are, do better with binoculars, but he seems to just, have such knowledge of the animals and their patterns and things like that. He can just, know that at a certain time of day in a certain area with certain plants present that are, key food sources and you can just be there at the right time with the right amount of knowledge and get onto some animals. But really, it's probably better to have optics. So you locate an animal and then you go after it and it's all game on. Like you drop all your heavy gear and then you make your way to a shooting position and you make a shot. And hopefully, if it goes down, that's when the real work starts. Everyone says like, oh yeah, that's fair enough. Like you got to carry all that meat as well as all your gear. It's like, well, yeah, but I don't think people could understand how exhausting butchering an animal is. Like staying hunched over an animal that's like about to slide off the mountain, you like got it wedged against your leg or something like that, and like your forearms are burning, your back aches, your quads are just done for because you've got to hold this position so you can actually butcher an animal for 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much meat you're able to recover. And so like from the second that animal hits the deck and like a photo has been taken or whatever, like man, you're just in overdrive mode.
Yeah, and it's still going to be a bit of a distance to get to the animal once you've shot it.
Yeah, in many cases, yep. So sometimes, you'll shoot from one finger, we call them like a small little ripple in the mountain, like a small ridge line. You'll shoot from one finger to the one over where an animal is. So you got to like either get round to them, and oftentimes across broken ground. Sometimes you have to go up above the broken ground and then down, or even worse, down to the bottom and then up the other side. That's pretty common. So everything is a struggle, and that's what you were saying. Like no safety net, no guardrails, nothing comes in.
And you're probably already gassed at this point too.
Oh yeah. Oh, you didn't go out for the evening hunt?
No, I didn't. I chickened out for all the listeners. So we got up there and we shot one tahr from the campsite, and we dealt with that. And then the boys galloped along to continue hunting, and they got 4 more. I think I could have if I'd pushed myself. I didn't push myself. That's just the reality of it. But yeah, it was already a 7-hour hike, a full day on the tools, so to speak. But as you said, that's really, you've got into the starting line.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
basically. And then from there, as I said, it's just the work continues to intensify until you get back to the vehicles.
Butcher the animal, load it up on top of the rest of your gear.
Yeah, get it back to camp, and then you got a full day of walking out. So it's like, what's so good about hunting is that even when you have it easy, like you could be walking in, like imagine if we were just like walking in and then before we started our ascent, it was just like, oh, there's one, bang.
Yeah.
Like you could just butcher it and go back to the car, but like,
right.
That's still, like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour's worth of butchery, then, still an absolute grind back to the car.
Yeah.
Even if it's only like 3 or 4 kilometers. So having it easy or having things
it's still hard.
pan out easily is still an insane workout. You know? I would think that you'd probably have to do like a week to 10 days worth of pretty intense workouts to equal just a single day of time in the mountains.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Depending on the circumstances. Like if you're some like soy milk latte drinking hiker that's like, I hike ultralight, and they're always just like on tracks, staying in huts. And their pack weighs like between 4 and 8 kilos, even for multi-day excursions. Like, I'm sorry, like it doesn't even count.
Yeah.
But like a proper day of good, honest hunting, where the intent is for everything to get harder as the hunt progresses. You know, a couple of days of that, you'd have to do like a month's worth of workouts to equal that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, like it's never been something super accessible to me, but it's a great experience. Like it's really, just as you said, like staying overnight, we had an amazing sunrise, and going back down and you're hiking the meet, and like it's gotten a bit harder, but at least you also know that you're going back to the vehicle, so it's like you're sort of on the second stretch of the race, so to speak. But there's I don't know how to put it. It's really an experience. Like I think that's the word I keep coming back to. Like it's not just this isolated event. It's like this full thing that you embark on, and you've got to see it through.
Yeah, I think that psychologically speaking, it's one of the most beneficial things that a person can do, particularly for a man. Like it just ticks all the boxes. You know, people say that, oh, men like things, not people, except hunting with a group of guys, like on that trip.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the most enjoyable, fulfilling things that you could do.
Yeah.
So like it brings men together, it strengthens them, it shows them what they can really do. Like there was a couple younger guys on that trip, you know, one of whom was like in sneakers and like, you know, like probably had like gel in his hair and was wearing a nice watch. You know, I was like, oh, this kid's gonna learn something on this trip, you know. And I bet that he came out of that with a very fresh perspective of himself, you know, because of the difficulty of it. And there's just so many things about it that you can't put your finger on, because it'll affect a different man in a different way, you know, depending on who you are. And so like we all went on that trip, and obviously I did it under different circumstances. For those listening, I had had a very, very pregnant wife, but I was keen to experience some of it with the boys. So I actually did exactly what I said I don't want to do. I went in for the day and then walked back out, and it was just as well I did with
Pierre.
Yeah, Pierre did his knee in and had a competition, like a judo competition coming up, so didn't want to continue, and so we went back out. So that was all good. But for you guys, like same trip, very, very different experience across all eight members. Yeah, 8 members. And I think that can't be overstated. Like you'll never be able to quite put your finger on it, but there's just something about being out in the mountains with a group of guys that, I mean, the ROI is outrageous. Like I said, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, well, I think you hear guys like Jocko talk about being in the teams and how it's literally like an indescribably peak experience of like all the boys rolling out in the Humvees with machine guns, and like you've got the mission ahead of you. That unity and will and just sheer physical action, like it's so masculine to the core, like everyone behind one banner, and I think you get that in hunting. Totally.
And I think something that's really, really important about hunting that men really, really need is a pursuit.
Yeah.
The pursuit. And when everyone's on the same page like that, like again, like I'm pardon me, but I don't actually know his name, the younger blonde guy with the nice watch on. I can't actually remember his name. But you know, like everyone was there for the same thing, including him. You know, like there wouldn't have been a bone in any of those men's bodies that weren't like, I hope we get something. I hope we grind it out in this blistering sun. We get up there and you know, like everyone is so behind the same objective, and that objective is the pursuit of a wild animal. And so when you think about it, it is so pure an experience. It's like we're going to pit ourselves against Mother Nature, against an animal that is, in this case, introduced to our mountains and has actually been designed and engineered by God to exist in a way harsher environment than here. Way steeper mountains, way colder. And so here, it's like paradise to them. And so we're pitting ourselves against Mother Nature and an animal that is so overqualified for the environment that we find it in.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going up against, you know? And sure, I mean, like if you're one of these like soy munchers, you'd be like, you know, like, but like men are apex predators and you've got all this equipment and stuff. Like, it's still hard. Like there's a reason why people still do it. If it was easy, people wouldn't do it. This is one of the opposite things.
Yeah.
You know, the saying, if it were easy, everyone would do it. No, this is the other way around. People do it because it's not easy. Because there's just something about it.
Yeah.
You can spend a lifetime with like Socrates level insight studying hunting and like why people love it so much, and the philosophy and the psychological effects and the physiological effects of it, and you'd like that would not be a wasted career. You know, that would not be a wasted life studying that. You'd probably never get to the bottom of it.
One of the things that I think is also a part of the experience is that it's completely disconnected. Like there's no safety net, but there's also no other people. There's no reception. You wake up, it's completely quiet. You know, the sun's rising, you've got the clouds, you've got the stars at night. Like it's such a pure connection to nature, and you're so far from civilization as well. Like it's really just man and the wild.
Yep. I love that aspect of it as well. And it's just the deafening silence.
Yeah,
I love it.
awesome. And I guess to move on to what you're now starting to do professionally, Lucas, so you're a guide, so you're not just hunting solo, but you're also kind of introducing people to it or walking them through this experience. What does that look like for you? And I know you just got back from a pretty big, not necessarily high stakes, maybe high stakes is how you would describe it, but walk us through that.
What I've just gotten back from, or in general?
Oh, both.
Okay, so we'll start with a more general overview. Yep, so a guided hunt involves someone most commonly coming internationally to pursue the game that we have here uniquely, or game that they've hunted before in a unique environment, because for those that don't know, New Zealand doesn't have any native mammals at all, apart from a small bat. So all 8 species of deer, and yes, there'll be people who are like, actually there's 7. No, there's 8. Crack a book. Multiple species of goat, alpine antelope. There's a plethora of game to come here and hunt. And
there's no tagging like they do in the US.
Correct. So in very, very certain areas that are like of special interest or around herds of special interest, in that particular area there's like time restrictions, but there's no like tags, there's no bag limits, so you could go out there and shoot 1 deer every day for a full year basically.
Yeah.
So for that reason, guiding is very, very popular, and yeah, it's just like a completely unique experience. New Zealand is so far disconnected from the rest of the world geographically, so people love the experience of like flying for 36 hours. So my group that's just come is from Denmark. They flew for 36 hours to get here, and Denmark is like pancake flat. There's no public land because it used to be a monarchy, so it's all crown land. So It's either privately owned or crown land, or both. It's like privately leased crown land, and so you like access is very hard to get. It's very expensive. You got to pay the landowner plus per animal and da 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 da. And sure, there's that sort of stuff here on private land, but public land with mountains, with the game that we have, is a completely foreign concept to people more or less all over the world. Like it's like we're the outlier, not like we're the exception, not the rule. We've got about more than 8.3 million hectares of public land in a country that's smaller than the state of California. You know, it's very, very special, and people just absolutely chomp at the bit to get down here. So guiding is very, very popular. It's also very fulfilling, as you can imagine, you know, helping people realize that ambition to fly to the bottom of the world and hunt this crazy looking goat that was designed to be in the Himalayas.
Right.
You know?
Sorry, quick question. When did you realize that was something you could do?
That is a fantastic question. I suppose I always knew that, but I don't even remember my aha moment where I was like, this is something that I want to do. I was working at the hunting store in like probably 2018.
Would people just ask you here and there to go out with you? Or?
No, not at all. Well, I suppose there's always an aspect of that, like you're seen as like an authority on the matter, even though I was very young. You know, like working in the hunting store, you get the odd customer who'd be like, oh, you know, like maybe you can take me out sometime, I'm just learning, which is sort of like a bit of an eye roller, like, you know, like it's like a gag, like staff don't like that. But I decided at some point that this is something that I want to do, and I got into it by emailing people, like cold emailing, and funnily enough, the first person I actually emailed got back to me, and that was the guy that I got a job with. So I was very, very lucky in that regard. So I did one trial trip in September 2018, and that was like 4 or 5 days. And he entrusted me with that, or to be a part of that, because that was a reoccurring client that he had. That they're like, sure, they're paying, but they're his friends.
Right.
You know, so I was able to tag along. He could sort of test the waters with me a little bit,
Yeah.
and he was happy. And then so straight away, I was into 90 days the very next year. So from like March something until June something, I had like 6 days off.
Wow. Just going back in and out.
I loved it. Like, I cannot describe. I've been thinking about it a little bit for this pod, because I knew you would ask. And I realized that I cannot describe the benefit that was to me, even though it wasn't necessarily an ideal situation. Like, the guy I worked for was like pretty far from like having Christian values and things like that. So it was like a pretty, I would go so far as to say a cruel guy. Like, he's a good man, just not a nice man. Like, he gave a lot to charity. Like, all of the animals that they shot, all the meat that the client couldn't take home with them, or perhaps they hunted from they had come to hunt from a country that you couldn't
take meat back.
You couldn't re-import it.
Yeah.
It all got donated, you know, and so he did that out of his own pocket. He paid to have it processed at the butcher and donating it to like homeless shelters. So he was a good man, I suppose, but not a very nice man to be around. And so I was living with this guy. We were like living on top of each other for like 3 months straight. I'm a punk kid. He's in his 50s. And what was worse was that I was the exact same age. I think like 3 months or 3 weeks possibly age difference between his son.
Yeah.
And so there was like this very weird dynamic.
Right.
And so like he was a hard taskmaster, plus he was a veteran, so he was in the Air Force. So, you know, this guy was tough to be around. He was a hard man to love, I'll tell you that much for free.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, that added to it and didn't detract from it, even though I was like borderline being verbally abused for like 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
There was something about it that like I was like, this is not like a chin down, like, oh, this is my lot in life. It was like no, this is something that I have to overcome. And there was never a moment where I was like, I'm done. You know, we didn't even have a contract signed for the duration of the season. Like, I could have just bounced it at any moment. But I had said that I was going to do the whole season. So despite us clashing heads constantly, I knew he needed my help still, because he was coming off a surgery, so he couldn't do the season alone. But even if that wasn't the case, I said that I was going to do the season. I'm freaking going to finish. And so there was so much learning that happened. And I think that every young man needs an experience like that. Like, get away from home, move cities, do whatever you need to do, like join the military for a couple of years. It's like that early adventure. Have you read Treasure Island?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a little bit of a Jim Hawkins situation where you've got like a father figure. And in this case, and in my case, in the case of Treasure Island with Silver, and my case with Kenty, father figure not so good. Like the mentor figure not so good, but it added to the experience and didn't take away from it. That like coming of age, becoming a man sort of experience, and I did that while navigating some very difficult dynamics. Like, a lot of the hunters that can afford to come to New Zealand, many of them spend a long time saving up. They're in their 50s, 60s, something. Like, I had some hunters in their 70s.
Then they're guys that have like history and attitude and
bingo.
Yeah.
And so I'm this punk 18-year-old trying to work through these dynamics. And multiple times I had to be like, look guys, I know that you guys have been hunting for a long time.
Right.
But this isn't Minnesota. Like, you guys can shoot 2 deer a year. I've shot 2 deer a year for I can't remember the last time I shot 2 deer, only 2 deer a year, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I've crammed a lot of experience. And so there was those moments where I had to really overcome a lot of things that were not just physical. They were, you know, psychological, social, and so on. And like, what other environment are you going to get that in? Like, if you're an intern at a company and you're becoming a man, like, I'm going to do like a super hard internship, I'm going to grind it out for the next couple of years and it's going to be really good for me, I'm going to learn all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. If you do that to someone who's superior of yours, you're just going to lose the internship. You know, like, you're done. You're out the door. If you try and put your foot down and be like, hey guys, I know what I'm talking about. So that was a very, very formative experience for me. Like, toss guiding out the window, if I never did it again. Very, very important experience for me.
I think that pressure and responsibility is indispensable. Like, I wouldn't say, because I worked on a dairy farm full time for like 3 years before going to Aussie and sort of doing that little chapter. But working 6 days a week. And I mean, I'm not pretending that it was super sacrificial. I know we were talking about it last night. Like, I don't claim to pretend that this is some kind of martyrdom or whatever, but the fact of me as an 18-year-old kid committing to that and taking on the responsibility and running the farm for short periods of time, having 3 or 4 people that I was kind of rostering and working with, and in some cases when Dad was away, managing them, I grew heaps, and I learned so much. And I remember I was reading like Jocko Willink's leadership books at the time, and probably nowhere near as personal dynamics as that situation that you just described. But I think that's essential for learning how to behave yourself and comport yourself. How much can I push? How much shouldn't I push here?
Yeah.
And of course, obviously the physicality of the environment itself. But that's how man grows. Man grows under pressure. And you can't replicate that. And that's why people go through uni and they're doing 4 units per semester, and they have part-time work over the summer, but not while they're studying, because otherwise it's too much.
Yeah,
And
too much.
yeah, you would have learned something, but there's no pressure. There's no real pressure.
Yeah, you learn things, but you don't grow.
Yeah.
There's no growth. And that was one of the things that I would describe that experience as it was an incredibly intense period of growth. Like, I just threw myself completely in the furnace. Like, there was no consideration. And in the first period of that season, I actually had to fly to the North Island. So there was no like going home, even if I wanted to, which I didn't. You know, I'll admit that it was tough. And like I said, Aaron Kent was pretty hard to get along with at times. But there was never a time where I was like, I want to go home, this is bad for me, like, and I think part of that is because my parents raised me with like quite an old school Puritan disciplinary sort of system. Not in the way that they were like, you know, like brutally strict or anything like that, no. But I think that sort of set me up to be like, I think that system of discipline structure for a young person sets them up to be like,
they respond better to...
They do respond better, but it's very much the fact that like, you're the kid, you're the punk, you don't know anything, like, be respectful of your elders, say yes sir, no sir, all that sort of stuff. So I already had that background, and if I didn't have that, like, instant drown. Like, there was no swimming, no treading water, just instantly drowned.
Yeah.
And probably asked to have been sent home. So if I didn't have that, I probably would have, but yeah, there was that intense pressure, and it was like locking the door and throwing away the key. Like, there's no backing out now.
So that was your first experience, and then I guess as you got older, was it still working for someone doing guiding, or did you eventually take on your own jobs?
That is a interesting little hiccup in the story, because I quit my job. So I resigned officially because I was going to be away for 3 months to do this season right off the bat. Because they couldn't guarantee that they'd have a job for me when I got back, basically.
From hunting and fishing.
Yeah, at the hunting store. So, because there was every possibility that I would continue the season or like go to Canada or whatever.
Yeah, it was just too...
Yeah, it was like too fluid. So they were like, please resign, and then we'll rehire you if we need you when you get back. So I do that, and then I work the rest of the year, and then ring-a-ding-ding, 2019, COVID. And I'd actually, like, literally days before Jacinda locked everything down, I'd secured another job with another guy and resigned. Like, paperwork was signed and handed in. I have no job. COVID hits. See you later. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't make it work to get back into the industry after that. I think there was maybe like an influx of people who were interested in it because COVID was like a reset button. I think there was a lot of people who sat around like, I hate my job. I'm resigning. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
I want to do this. Now's my moment. You know, and so I couldn't get back into the industry, and if truth be told, there was a little bit of a lack of motivation too also, because I was like, I had the job and now I don't have the job. It's not that I didn't want to go find another one. It was also like, well, you know, to be fair, it's like at some point you got to grow up, because I sort of saw guiding as this very glamorous thing. It's like gallivanting around the mountains.
The dream job.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And so I was like, oh well, I want to get married and have a family very shortly. So at some point I'm going to have to just give it up anyway. So I might as well just do that now. Get a good stable job and raise a family, you know, sort of thing. And what I didn't...
I think we'll circle back to that because I think it's a great discussion in terms of like, do you drop everything and chase your passion at every moment in life, or when is there compromise? But continue.
Yeah, that is a good aspect of it. But so I dropped everything, made the adult decision, you know,
Yeah.
stop chasing the fairy tale boy, just get a stable job and have a family and get a mortgage or whatever. What I didn't realize was that you know, God did not have that in store for me immediately, because I thought it was like straight away, like get hitched, you know, pregnant wife within 6 months sort of thing, the dream. It took us 6 years to conceive Bradley. So I could have 100% have been like guiding hell for leather and had like a booming business between then and now. But the whole time I was like, any minute now, any minute I'm just like gonna have kicked back into responsible mode. So there's no point in going guiding. So I've actually spent the last few years like basically doing no guiding. And just recently, 8-10 months ago, was contacted by some friends of some ex-clients of mine. And they said, hey, we're coming to New Zealand, I've heard so much about you, been sitting around listening to Casper tell all these wild stories for the last 5 years. We want you to guide us. We know that you're not like officially guiding at the moment, yada yada, so we'll cover all the expenses. And like this is a completely out of the blue conversation. Like Casper didn't even tell me that they were going to be messaging. And so I like walk into the living room with this dumb look on my face. Like Kirsty's heavily pregnant at this point, or getting towards being heavily pregnant at this point, and she's like, "What?" And so we talk it out, and I'm like, "I could make this work, right? Like 30 to 50 days a year, like we could make this work on top of a full-time job." And so that's how the business came about. Because I finally figured out a way that I think that I could reconcile the two and actually pull together that family man life that I really, really want and desire, and have been in pursuit of for a long time, but also this thing that I never let go of. Like for those years that I wasn't really very involved in the industry, like I literally was awake at night thinking, like staring at the roof, thinking about how I could make it work, how I can warp my surroundings and pull the two together. And I'm in, baby. I finally figured it out.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Well, let's just break down this final trip, as we close off the podcast, because I mean, it sounds like it was a pretty big trip. International clients, they've probably got expectations, obviously, about what's going to happen or what they're going to get. Walk us through what that trip was.
Yeah, so it was 2 brothers from Denmark, 2 twins, and a fiance. So the twins flew in on the 14th, and then Julianne flew in on the 19th, and I had them until the 23rd. And so it was a big trip, 10 days, 7, I think it ended up being 7 days worth of hunting, but we planned on 8 with 2 travel days. The weather was absolutely miserable. So at the time of recording this, over the last 2 weeks, 10 days-ish, like the weather's just been absolutely miserable. I think the North Island, did they classify it as a cyclone or a hurricane?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. And so we spent the whole trip like dodging miserable weather and like very tough conditions. And the guys, ended up getting their animals, and there was a lot of pressure involved for me because it was the first big trip since I had started the company. It was my first clients to have actually booked, and I actually did them a pretty significant discount because they wanted to film everything and put out some videos, and so I was going to get all that footage to use for marketing and ads, and their most recent video that they did about some deer hunting in Sweden had like not blown up, but I want to target the European market anyway, and so their video that's in Danish did like tens of thousands of views in a few months, and so I'm like, dang, this is going to be very valuable. So there was so much pressure involved.
So were they recording the trip themselves?
Yeah. So I did a little bit, but they did the majority of it, getting the footage.
They have a drone or?
No, but everything else. Like
Yeah.
I got an adapter for the spotting scope so that you can put an iPhone on it and like record footage of the animals before you take them while you're assessing the trophy potential and actually get the shot on film and everything like that. So we basically did all of that. And so basically I sort of saw this as not just the inaugural trip of the business, but also like not a make or break. Like I would have figured it out even if this trip wasn't the success that it ended up being, but there was a lot of pressure involved. And it was sort of, it was odd because a guided hunt isn't a cheap venture. So usually there's pressure on you to perform and be very professional.
They wouldn't want to pay all that money and...
Exactly, and you don't want them to pay all that money. I've realized in the last few years that it's not just the guiding side of things, it's just tourism, it's just talking with international people, it's being an enabler for people's international experiences that I'm genuinely passionate about. I actually really loved working at the hunting shop. And not because I just like the gear. I do. I'm a bit of a gear nut, but I would like be bored until the second a client or a customer walked in, you know, and then I could do my thing and talk to them. I just genuinely really am passionate about that side of things, and so I want them to succeed probably more than they do, you know, even though they've got all this capital investment. And so for this trip in particular, it was a bit different. Like there was a pretty significant discount done, like I said, so they hadn't paid as much. But for me, it was like, I have to make this trip go absolutely nuts, off the rails, be so good because of all the footage that I would need and want for websites and Instagram accounts and running ads and stuff. So there was an incredible amount of pressure put on me. And interestingly enough, we talk about a lot of stuff between us and on this podcast about, you know, like the virtues of being a man, like being, you know, stable under pressure, you know, being strong, capable, all these sorts of things. And a lot of what we talk about, I have reason to discuss because that's something that's a difficulty with me. I'm actually an overthinker naturally. I'll spend like 2 hours spiraling out about what to do on the website.
Yeah.
But the second those guys stepped off that plane, I was just so locked in.
Yeah.
And objectively, like 100x the pressure. Because now it's on. I can just sit at home on the laptop and spiral out overthinking about things that don't matter. There's no timeline. But
Yeah.
the second that clients get there, super professional, you have to be, well, let's put it this way. People will pick up really fast if you don't know what you're talking about, or if you're ill-equipped or ill-prepared, or, you know, if there's any cracks,
Yeah.
you know.
It's very visible.
Very, very visible. Light's going to shine through there really, really quickly, and people can smell a rat in a hurry. And so it was very interesting to me that just all went out the window. Like all that overthinking, all that nonsense, all that imposter syndrome just straight out the window. We're on here. And so I'll admit, I'm pretty happy with how it all went. So the helicopter was weathered off, so we didn't get to fly in to the area we wanted. So we thought, oh, bugger it. We've got like 8 hours before this weather bomb arrives, and so we'll walk in. So we spend basically 8 hours getting in there, setting up camp, and then we find a bull Tahr. We go over there, we get it done in very precarious conditions. We're walking back to the tent in the dark. There's like a layer of ice that's been like attached to us because sleet is coming in sideways. My tent is shredded. There's a manufacturer's default. The client's tent was completely fine. Admittedly, I gave them the better quality one, obviously. And so I spent a pretty uncomfortable night with it like snowing and wind and rain coming in sideways. And like I said, it's all those things add to it. They don't take away from it. And then, yeah, the trip progressed from there and was actually really good, even though, like, in spite of the bad weather and possibly because of it. Like, as I said, I think it's a completely unique experience at hunting in general. That, like, where else can you pay all that money or have invested all that in gear or whatever, and then put in all that effort and, like, it be raining, miserable, lightning, like, you've frozen toes, and you'd be like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There is nothing.
How do you go about determining like the capacity of the client? Because it sounds like these guys were hunters, but how do you judge that from your point of view?
So tough. I actually just this morning got off the phone with a friend of mine who's also a guide, and he has the benefit of quite a bit of private land access, which...
So you can pick and choose a bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's a little bit easier, you know, like, you know, the animals are going to be there, you know, they're not going to be hunted by Joe Blow on, you know, every weekend a year sort of thing. Certainly still a hunt, especially for a lot of the game that we have here, because it's like steep, it's rugged, it's definitely not a gimme. Plus, most of the animals that we have here will launch themselves over any fence that isn't 8+ feet tall, you know, so most fences can't even contain wild game here.
Yeah.
And he had a guy who weighed 200 kilos. 200 kilograms. He said that to me on the phone, and I almost had to stop him right there and take a minute, because on a Tahr hunt, which is the alpine goat that is from the Himalayas, and he still got it done with the guy. So that's something that is incredibly important, and it's one of the skills that makes or breaks a guide. Hunting is the easy part. If you claim to be a guide, then everyone knows that you're a good hunter. It's the other aspects of how you operate that make you a good guide or not. I know guys who are objectively better hunters than me because they kill more stuff, but they would make terrible guides.
Yeah.
And so judging a client's abilities is really, really difficult, because from the moment that you get that first message or email, you are judging them and assessing them. And a lot of people will overstate what they're capable of, and not just physically, also shooting as a discipline. Someone will say, "Oh, I'm not that fit, but I'm a crack shot," and then you put them on the test range prior to the hunt, and they can't hit the broadside of a barn, and then you're in real trouble. It's something that involves a lot of tact and a lot of consideration, and even more than that.
Yeah, without offending the.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just about to say. Even more than actually making the assessment, figuring out how you're going to work around that.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to communicate that. They know, if they've overstated their fitness, or if they were fit when they emailed you 18 months ago to book the hunt, and then the hunt comes around, finally they're there and they've let themselves go. They know, and they'll be pretty disappointed in themselves, and you've got to be able to work around that, even if you don't necessarily touch on it directly, because it can be a bit of a sensitive nerve for people. I had this one guy from Kentucky, Bob, in 2018, and he and his friend were in their late 50s, early 60s, I think, and his friend was really fit, had actually done a lot of 15K events prior to coming out, and so he was zipping around with his walking poles. He was crushing it, and Bob had done his best, but actually had a bad knees and didn't realize how bad they were until he was like that on the hill with
pushing to the limit.
Slippery tussock, and he really, really struggled, and we still got it done. And I'd like to think that he remembers that very fondly, because I made space for him, and we still got it done. And he wasn't just after one animal, he was after two. He was after the Alpine Double, so the bull Tahr and a buck chamois, which is the Alpine antelope that was from the Swiss Alps. They are not easy hunts, and we've got a guy who's between 58 and 62 with buggered knees, and we still made it happen, and still made space for the fact that he's cussing himself out and throwing his hat on the ground. He's I can't believe this, I'm so disappointed in myself, It's this constant dance, and so you've got to be so good in so many ways at so many things all at once. You've got to have many, many hats. Like I said, hunting's the easy part. Part of the reason why I love it, because I'm a social person, and like I said, I'm an enabler. That's my passion.
No, that's brilliant. I'm sure there's many more things we could talk about there, but we might close it off. I guess if anyone is interested, I know you'd be happy to guide people. We've got a bit of an Aussie audience. We obviously do some F50K hunting trips. We were going to do one this winter, but there's 3 babies due over the next 3 to 4 months with all the people involved, so we had to just put a pin in it. But it's definitely something we want to do more, because as Fit for the Kingdom, we want to be as fit as possible, and it integrates so many elements of God's creation and fitness and brotherhood. It's just really the Neapolitan ice cream of Fit for the Kingdom activities.
Yeah, it is. It's the triple header for sure.
Yeah, but we'll leave it there then. If people also want to come to St. Michael's Troops, we've got that coming up next weekend. So that'll be all across Australia and New Zealand, basically. There's a few varying dates. Melbourne, if there's any Melbourneites listening to this, you've got your first event on May 23rd. So definitely check that out on the website. We will bring Lucas back on to round off some of the other points that we've touched on within our conversations, mostly around finance. And I think it's something that deserves a lot more discussion in terms of, that's one of the main pursuits as men, and it's directly related with our ability to provide.
So many people are just screwing the pooch on it.
Yeah, they're not making money, they're not saving money, they're not investing money. You're not really doing anything with that money.
I think, as we discussed last night, I think the linchpin there is the way people view money. They're emotional about it. I think that's what needs to be removed. And so, like as men, you have to be able to do this with a lot of things. You know, like you have to be able to be the one that is the tough guy when you have to put your dog down, or all these sorts of things. And you have to be the one that is not emotional about finance, and you have to be the one driving that vehicle. It's not just your responsibility to get the money, it's also about how to manage it. And I think that so many men are failing at that, partially because of societal messaging.
But we live in such a consumerist culture.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I'm very, very proud that I've begun hitting the nail on the head with. And so I'm frothing to talk about that. It's something that I'm very passionate about helping people with.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, that's something you can look forward to on the next one. It won't be long, I think. We need to get onto it. But yeah, if this episode was useful to you, the easiest and free thing that you can do to support the pod is subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. It costs you nothing and helps us reach more men who need to hear these messages. And we're also on Apple Podcasts now. Leave us a comment on YouTube or Spotify. Tell us what landed, what you're working on, what you want us to cover next. If you want to go deeper than the podcast, as we mentioned before, we've got the events and we're basically ramping up the frequency everywhere. Sydney's got weekly trainings. Christchurch, now we have weekly meets. We've got the Built Different talks going. So we're really here to build back flesh and blood what we're talking about on the pod. Like, this isn't just a message that we're going to yap on about, record it and post it and then forget about it. Like, we're pretty serious about turning this into something real. And it already is. You know, we've got hundreds of men attending these events across 2 countries. We'll be starting in the US soon as well, which is pretty exciting, but it's all uphill, so you can join us or you can get left on the sidelines, but we're going to keep getting after it. We do have a bit of an online community called the Legion, which we basically do exactly what we talk about on the show. We dive into some of these topics a bit more, some presentations, Q&As, basically getting around other guys who are living this message. So if you wanted something in between the events, or maybe you're in a country where we don't run events, you can join the Legion. It's worth 2 coffees a week, but our aim and goal is that you get that amount of value and more by being a part of the community. You can follow Fit for the Kingdom on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Kingdom Fit NZ. You can follow Lucas at Mighty Alps NZ. That's his business Instagram. Website's coming out soon. And
so close.
I'll also link his personal IG below. You can follow myself at domas.mones on Instagram. I'm on X now, doing a bit of content there, and YouTube as well. So yeah, thanks for listening. Make sure you take action on what we've discussed, and we'll see you on the next one. God bless.
God bless.